Evelyn Hart lived in a world of gold and glass. Her mansion stood on top of a hill, surrounded by tall iron gates and shining gardens that looked like they were made for kings. Every morning, sunlight poured through the giant windows, making the marble floors glow. Inside, everything was perfect. The paintings, the furniture, even the air smelled expensive. People called her the Ice Queen behind her back, not because she was cruel, but because she was distant. She believed feelings were distractions and perfection was everything. In this grand mansion, full of silence and order, worked Maria, her maid. Maria had been serving Evelyn for almost 10 years. She was kind, gentle, and spoke softly. Her life was simple, her clothes plain, but her heart was rich with love for her only son, Leo. Every morning she would walk to the mansion, holding Leo's hand until they reached the servants' entrance at the back. Then she would kiss his forehead, whisper, "Be good, my boy," and go inside to start her long day of work. Leo was a quiet, curious child. While his mother worked, he stayed in the small servants' room behind the kitchen. It wasn't much, just a chair, an old rug, and sometimes a slice of cake the cook secretly gave him. But Leo didn't complain. He liked watching the world from that little window. He saw rich people coming and going, dressed in shining clothes, laughing like they owned the world. He didn't understand their lives, but he dreamed about them. In the corner of one of the big empty halls stood an old piano, covered with a white cloth. No one played it anymore. It had belonged to Evelyn's late husband, who had passed away years ago. Since then, the piano sat there, silent and forgotten, just like a closed book full of stories no one wanted to read. But whenever Leo saw that piano, something inside him lit up. One afternoon, when no one was around, Leo tiptoed into the hall. His small fingers lifted the cloth, and for the first time he touched the smooth black and white keys. They felt cool under his skin. He pressed one gently. A single note filled the room, soft and clear. He smiled. Then he pressed another and another. He didn't know what he was doing, but somehow the sounds made sense to him. They spoke to him in a language he didn't need to learn. From that day, whenever Maria was busy cleaning or serving tea, Leo would sneak into the hall and play. Sometimes he made mistakes, but instead of stopping, he laughed and tried again. The music began to fill the empty rooms with life. It was as if the old piano had been waiting for him all these years. The other servants noticed first. They would pause in the hallway, listening quietly. "That boy's got magic in his fingers," one of them whispered. The cook nodded, smiling. "He plays like he's telling a story." But they never told Evelyn. Everyone in the mansion knew that Evelyn Hart didn't like surprises. Maria found out one evening when she heard the sound of the piano while sweeping the floor. She froze, recognizing her son's small hands on the keys. Panic filled her. If Evelyn found out, she could lose her job. But as she stood in the doorway watching Leo, her fear melted into pride. His face was full of joy, his body moving gently with the rhythm. She could see that he wasn't just pressing keys. He was creating something beautiful, something that came from his heart. Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't stop him. She let him play. When he finished, she clapped softly. Leo turned, surprised. "Mama, I didn't mean to," he began, but she smiled and hugged him tight. "You have a gift, my son," she whispered. "But you must be careful. Not everyone will understand." From then on, Maria tried to keep Leo's secret. She made sure he only played when the house was quiet, usually when Evelyn was out attending charity events or business meetings. Sometimes she would stand by the door and listen, letting the music wash away her tiredness. Meanwhile, Evelyn continued her busy life, unaware of the small miracle growing inside her home. She spent her days signing contracts, hosting dinners, and appearing in magazines. People admired her beauty and her power, but no one saw the loneliness behind her perfect smile. The sound of music had been missing from her life for a long time, ever since her husband's death. She didn't know that just a few rooms away, a little boy was bringing that music back, piece by piece, note by note. One morning, Evelyn passed through the hall while talking to a guest. She didn't notice that the piano was slightly uncovered, or that a child's small fingerprints marked the keys. But soon fate would make her notice. The quiet mansion was about to wake up, and the maid's son, with nothing but his tiny hands and a heart full of dreams, was about to change everything. For now, though the house remained silent, holding its secret, Maria continued her work, polishing the silver, sweeping the floors, smiling politely at her employer. And Leo kept dreaming. his mind full of melodies only he could hear. He didn't know where those tunes came from or what they meant, but he played them with all his heart. And in that grand mansion, where gold glimmered but warmth was scarce, a little boy's music began to fill the air, quietly, secretly, beautifully. It was the beginning of something extraordinary, though no one knew it yet. Leo's love for the piano grew stronger every day. It started as curiosity, just a child pressing random keys, but soon it became something deeper, something that even he couldn't explain. Every note he played felt like a heartbeat. He didn't know how to read music. He had never seen a lesson in his life. Yet when his fingers touched the piano, melodies flowed out like they had been waiting inside him all along. The grand piano stood at the end of the long marble hall, near a tall window where golden light poured in every afternoon. It was old but elegant, its black surface shining faintly even under the dust. When Leo sat on the heavy wooden stool, his small legs dangled in the air, unable to reach the floor. But that didn't stop him. The piano became his world, a world where he wasn't the maid's son, where no one looked down on him, and where he could dream as freely as the wind outside those tall windows. Each day, as soon as Maria got busy with her chores, polishing silver, dusting chandeliers, or preparing Evelyn's evening tea, Leo would quietly slip into the music room. He moved like a shadow, careful not to make noise on the marble floor. Once he reached the piano, his nervousness melted away. He'd lift the cloth, take a deep breath, and start playing. Sometimes he played soft tunes that sounded like raindrops. Other times, his fingers created fast, exciting rhythms that made even the quiet curtains seem to dance. The sound floated through the hallways, touching everything it passed, the paintings, the flowers, even the hearts of the servants who pretended not to hear. The cook, Mrs. Baker, once stopped kneading dough to listen. She smiled, whispering, "That child has angels in his hands." The gardener nodded from the doorway. "I've seen birds land near the window when he plays," he said softly. Even they stopped to listen. But Leo never played for attention. He played because it made him happy. Happier than anything else in the world. Sometimes, after finishing a tune, he would close his eyes and imagine himself on a big stage, wearing a suit like the ones he saw in Evelyn's grand parties. The audience would clap, the lights would shine, and his mother would sit in the front row smiling proudly. Then he would open his eyes, see the plain walls and the dusty floor, and laugh to himself. "Maybe one day," he'd whisper. One afternoon, Evelyn's piano tuner came by to fix a few keys. Leo hid behind the curtain, watching carefully as the man worked. The tuner pressed the keys, tightened screws, and listened with closed eyes. Leo tried to memorize everything, the way he adjusted the strings, the way he listened to the smallest sound. He wanted to understand how this beautiful machine worked. After the man left, Leo ran to the piano and tried everything he had seen. To his surprise, he managed to fix one of the soft pedals that had been stuck for months. When Maria saw it working again, she couldn't believe it. "Leo, how did you do that?" she asked. He shrugged shyly. "I just listened." Maria hugged him tightly. She knew there was something special about her boy, something pure and powerful, but she also knew how fragile dreams could be in a world that didn't belong to them. She made him promise never to play when Evelyn was home. "One day the right person will hear you," she said softly. "But not yet." Leo nodded, though his heart wished otherwise. Months passed, and his music grew more confident. He began creating his own tunes, songs that came from his feelings, the happiness of a sunny morning, the sadness when his mother looked tired, the wonder of the stars he saw from the servant's window at night. He didn't know it, but he was composing stories through sound, each note a word, each melody a memory. Sometimes Maria would sneak into the hall at night after finishing her work, just to listen. She would sit quietly by the door as Leo played, her heart swelling with love and fear at the same time. Fear, because she knew if Evelyn ever found out, her son's joy might turn into trouble. One evening, Evelyn came home earlier than usual. Leo, unaware, was playing a soft, dreamy melody. The sound floated through the air as Evelyn removed her coat. She paused. "What's that?" she asked one of her guests. The man shrugged. "It sounds like a piano." Evelyn frowned. None of her guests had arrived yet, and she had no pianist scheduled for the evening. The music stopped suddenly. Leo had heard footsteps. He quickly covered the piano and ran toward the kitchen. Maria met him halfway, her face pale. "Go," she whispered urgently. Quickly. He hid behind the storage shelves as Evelyn entered the hall. Evelyn lifted the cloth from the piano. Everything looked normal. She touched a few keys and the sound echoed beautifully. Strange, she murmured. It sounds alive again. Then she left, assuming the tuner had done his job well. After she was gone, Leo came out of hiding, breathing fast. Maria knelt beside him. You must be careful, my boy, she whispered. He nodded, eyes wide. But that night, as he lay in bed, he smiled to himself. She hadn't found him, and he still had his piano. Every secret carries a heartbeat, and Leo's music had become the secret heartbeat of the mansion. No one spoke of it, but everyone felt it. The servants hummed his tunes while working. Even Evelyn, without realizing, sometimes found herself thinking of those mysterious melodies that seemed to appear from nowhere. Leo didn't know it yet, but his hidden music was changing the air around him, softening hearts, stirring emotions, and preparing the world for a day when his gift could no longer remain a secret. In that vast, lonely mansion where power ruled and silence reigned, a small boy's music had become the whisper of something greater, the beginning of a miracle waiting to be heard. The winter evening was alive with laughter, crystal glasses, and the soft hum of expensive conversation. Evelyn Hart's mansion sparkled brighter than ever before. Chandeliers glittered like stars. The scent of roses filled the air, and servants moved swiftly, carrying trays of fine wine and silver dishes. It was one of Evelyn's famous gatherings, the kind where the city's richest and most important people came to be seen. Everything had to be perfect, from the polished floors to the music that floated gently through the hall. But that evening, something was not going according to plan. The pianist Evelyn had hired, and a well-known performer, had not arrived yet. The guests were beginning to grow restless. People checked their watches and whispered to each other. The hall felt too quiet without music. Evelyn tried to keep her calm smile, though irritation flickered in her eyes. She didn't like imperfection. Not in her house. Maria, dressed in her neat uniform, moved through the room with a silver tray, careful not to make noise. Her heart beat a little faster tonight. The mansion felt tense, like a storm about to break. She kept her eyes low, avoiding the gaze of the guests. But near the corner of the hall, behind the heavy curtains, she knew her son Leo was quietly watching. She had let him come with her tonight because she couldn't find anyone to look after him. He had promised to stay out of sight. Evelyn's closest friend, a tall man with a booming laugh, tried to lighten the mood. Perhaps you should play something yourself, Evelyn, he teased. You were quite the pianist once. Evelyn forced a polite smile. Those days are long gone, Charles, she said. Besides, my piano deserves better than my old hands. As the laughter faded, a sharp thought crossed her mind, a mix of pride and annoyance. Her eyes landed on Maria, who stood quietly near the doorway. Maria, she said suddenly, loud enough for everyone to hear. Your little boy is here tonight, isn't he? The room went silent. Maria froze, unsure what to say. Yes, ma'am, she whispered. Evelyn's lips curved into a small smirk. Well then, she said lightly, since our pianist has failed us, why don't we let your boy entertain us? A few guests chuckled. Someone murmured, how amusing. Another added, this should be interesting. The idea was absurd, but in a room full of bored elites, it sounded like harmless fun. Evelyn thought it would be a moment's distraction, a joke, perhaps even a lesson in humility. Maria's face went pale. She looked toward the curtain where Leo hid. Her eyes begged him to stay where he was. But Evelyn's voice came again, sharper this time. Bring him out, Maria. Let's see if the boy has any courage. Maria's hands trembled. She wanted to refuse, to say her son was shy or sick, but she couldn't. Defying Evelyn meant risking her job, the only way she could feed her child. So she turned and whispered softly, Leo, come here, my love. From behind the curtain, a small figure stepped forward. Leo's heart was racing. Dozens of eyes turned toward him, cold, curious, and amused. He clutched his hands together, trying not to tremble. Evelyn looked down at him with a raised brow. Well, she said, can you play? Leo nodded slowly. He didn't speak, his throat felt too tight. Evelyn gestured toward the piano. Go on then. Let's hear the Maid's son. A few people laughed under their breath. Maria wanted to disappear. But as Leo walked toward the grand piano, something changed in his expression. The fear in his eyes faded, replaced by quiet determination. The piano wasn't just an instrument to him. It was his friend, his voice. He climbed onto the stool, his feet barely touching the pedals. For a moment, silence hung heavy in the air. Then he pressed the first key. A single soft note echoed through the room. Then another, and another. At first, the guests exchanged amused looks. A child's clumsy attempt, they thought. But within seconds, the music changed. The notes began to flow together, smooth, delicate, full of feeling. The room fell still. No one spoke. The laughter stopped. Leo's small hands moved gracefully, confidently, as if he had been born for this. The melody rose and fell like a heartbeat. It wasn't a song anyone recognized, but it carried emotion, hope, sadness, love, all woven together. The kind of music that makes people feel something deep even when they can't explain why. Maria stood at the edge of the room, her hands pressed to her chest, tears gathering in her eyes. She had heard him play before, but never like this. Tonight his music was stronger, braver. It filled the hall with life. Evelyn, still standing, felt her breath catch. She had expected an awkward performance, a bit of laughter, but what she saw and heard stunned her. The boy was not just good. He was extraordinary. His face glowed with focus and emotion, his tiny fingers moving with impossible grace. Each note seemed to pull at something inside her, something she hadn't felt in years. When Leo finished, the last note lingered in the air, trembling like a secret. For a moment there was silence, not awkward, but full of awe. Then slowly someone began to clap. Others followed until the entire room erupted into applause. Evelyn blinked, caught between pride and disbelief. She forced a smile, but her mind raced. How, she thought. How could a maid's son play like that? Maria rushed forward and wrapped her arms around Leo. He looked up at her with a shy smile. "Did I do good, Mama?" he whispered. "You were perfect," she said, her voice breaking. Evelyn approached them, her heels clicking softly against the marble floor. She looked down at Leo, her expression unreadable. "You have quite a talent," she said finally. Her tone was calm, but inside she felt something strange, a mixture of admiration and unease. The boy bowed his head politely. "Thank you, ma'am," he murmured. As the guests left that night, they couldn't stop talking about the little boy who played like a prodigy. Evelyn's mansion, for once, was filled with more than luxury. It was filled with wonder. But deep in Evelyn's mind, one thought lingered, a thought that would not leave her. What if this child's gift could outshine her world of perfection? The night that began as a joke had turned into something unforgettable. The moment when a maid's son made the entire room listen. The next morning, the mansion seemed different. It was as if the walls themselves remembered the sound of Leo's music. The servants whispered about it in the kitchen, still amazed by what they had witnessed. Even Mrs. Baker, who was not easily impressed, kept shaking her head and saying, "That boy's got something special, something you can't teach." But in the grand dining room, Evelyn Hart sat quietly at her table, stirring her tea without drinking it. She was thinking. The image of Leo playing the piano wouldn't leave her mind. The way his small fingers had danced across the keys, the emotion in his face. It had touched something deep inside her, something she hadn't felt in years. Still, Evelyn was a woman who didn't like surprises, especially not from her servants. She wasn't used to being humbled, and what happened last night had shaken her. The guests had praised the boy endlessly, calling him a young genius, a wonder, a prodigy. Some had even asked Evelyn if he was related to her. She had smiled politely but said nothing. Inside, her pride burned. Meanwhile, Maria was in the servants' quarters folding laundry and trying to act normal. But her heart was full of fear, full of pride, and full of hope. She couldn't forget the look on her son's face when the audience clapped for him. For the first time, Leo had seen that his gift could move people, but she also knew Evelyn too well. Her mistress didn't like attention that wasn't her own. Later that day, Evelyn sent for Maria. When Maria entered the study, she stood still, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. Evelyn looked up from her papers and said in her usual calm voice, "Maria, about last night." Maria's heart raced. She didn't know if Evelyn was angry or impressed. Evelyn leaned back in her chair. "Your son surprised me," she said. "He plays with feeling." I didn't expect that from someone so young. Young. Thank you, ma'am, Maria said softly, unsure of what else to say. But tell me, Evelyn continued, her eyes sharp. Where did he learn? Who taught him? Maria shook her head. No one, ma'am. He just listens. He learns by himself. Evelyn frowned slightly as if the answer didn't make sense. By himself? She repeated. Impossible. Children don't play like that without training. Maria wanted to tell her that Leo's music came from the heart, that it was something natural, something pure, but she knew Evelyn wouldn't understand. So she simply said, he loves the piano, ma'am. It speaks to him. Evelyn didn't reply right away. She looked out the window, her expression distant. Keep him out of the main hall from now on, she said finally. We can't have him wandering around where he doesn't belong. Maria's heart sank. Yes, ma'am, she whispered. When she left the study, her eyes stung with unshed tears. She wanted to protect her son's gift, not hide it. But for now, she had no choice. That night, Leo noticed her sadness. Mama, he asked softly, did I do something wrong? Maria smiled weakly and touched his cheek. No, my love. You did something wonderful. But sometimes wonderful things scare people who don't understand them. Leo didn't fully understand, but he hugged his mother anyway. I'll play softly next time, he whispered. Days turned into weeks. Evelyn went back to her busy life. Meetings, parties, business calls. But now, every time she walked past the piano, she remembered the sound of Leo's music. It haunted her in a strange, beautiful way. She even caught herself humming one of his melodies once, only to stop immediately when she realized it. One afternoon, when the house was quiet, she walked into the music hall. Dust had begun to settle again on the piano. Evelyn sat down and ran her fingers over the keys. Her hands trembled slightly as she played a few simple notes. The sound was clear but empty. Nothing like the music Leo had played. She sighed, feeling something she rarely felt. Envy. How could a child from nothing create something so alive? She whispered to herself. Just then she heard soft footsteps. Leo had entered the room, holding a tray of flowers he was helping his mother carry. When he saw Evelyn at the piano, he froze. I'm sorry, ma'am, he said quickly. I didn't mean to come in. Evelyn turned to look at him. Do you still play? She asked suddenly. He nodded shyly. Only when Mama says it's okay. Evelyn studied him for a moment. There was something in his eyes, a mix of innocence and wisdom far beyond his years. Play something for me, she said, her voice quiet but firm. Leo hesitated. I thought I wasn't supposed to. I'm telling you to, Evelyn said. So he sat down beside her and began to play. The room filled with the same magic as before, soft, emotional, and alive. Evelyn didn't speak, didn't move. She just listened. When he finished, she remained silent for a long moment. Finally, she said, You remind me of someone I once knew. Leo tilted his head. Did they play the piano too? Evelyn nodded. Yes, my husband. He was a musician before the business, before all of this. He used to play for me every evening. Her voice grew softer, distant, as if she were speaking to a memory rather than a child. After he died, I couldn't stand the sound of music. It hurt too much, so I stopped listening. Leo looked at her quietly, unsure what to say. Then, with the simple honesty of a child, he said, Maybe you just needed the right song. Evelyn blinked, taken aback. For a moment, she didn't know how to respond. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled, a small, genuine smile that made her look years younger. Perhaps, she said. Perhaps I did. After that day, something subtle changed. Evelyn no longer looked at Leo as just a servant's child. There was a flicker of respect and curiosity. The boy had unknowingly opened a door in her heart that had been closed for years. And though Maria still worried about what the future might bring, she sensed it too, that her son's music had touched something powerful. What began as a moment of mockery was slowly turning into something far more meaningful, a fragile connection between two worlds that were never meant to meet. That night, the mansion didn't feel cold anymore. Something had changed, something quiet but real. It was as if Leo's music had left a warm echo in every corner, softening even the hardest hearts. The servants went about their duties with lighter steps, humming bits of the tune Leo had played earlier that day. The cook caught herself whistling as she chopped vegetables. Even the old gardener smiled more often. But the biggest change was inside Evelyn's heart. For the first time in years, her thoughts were not about money or business. They were about sound, about the way the boy's music had reached into the emptiness she thought she had buried long ago. She sat by her bedroom window that night, looking out at the glowing city below, and found herself remembering her late husband. He had been gentle, full of dreams, always playing that same piano Leo now loved. When he died, she had closed herself off from the world. Success had become her only escape from grief. Now, the child of her maid, a boy who had nothing, had somehow reminded her what being alive felt like. The next morning, Evelyn surprised everyone by asking Maria to bring Leo to the parlor. Maria felt nervous but obeyed. She told her son to stand straight, to be polite, to speak only when spoken to. Leo nodded, though his small hands fidgeted nervously. When they entered the parlor, Evelyn was already waiting, sitting on a velvet chair near the window. The piano gleamed behind her. She smiled, a rare soft smile. "Good morning, Leo," she said. "Good morning, ma'am," he replied, his voice quiet but clear. Evelyn gestured to the piano. "Would you like to play something for me again?" Maria's heart jumped, but Evelyn's tone was kind, not mocking, so Leo walked to the piano, sat down, and began to play. This time he chose a happy tune, light and full of sunshine. The sound filled the air like laughter, warm and alive. Evelyn watched him closely. His movements were effortless, as if he wasn't thinking at all, just feeling. When he finished, Evelyn clapped softly. "Beautiful," she said. "You play like you've known music forever." Leo smiled shyly. "It just comes to me," he said. Evelyn leaned forward slightly. "And what do you feel when you play?" Leo thought for a moment, his brows furrowing. "I feel free," he said finally. "When I play, I'm not small anymore. I'm not scared. It's like the music takes me somewhere else, somewhere happy." Evelyn sat back, his words echoing in her mind. She hadn't felt free in a very long time. She glanced at Maria, who stood nervously by the door, unsure whether this was good or dangerous. Evelyn turned back to Leo. "Would you like to learn properly?" she asked. Leo's eyes widened. "Learn?" "Yes," Evelyn said. "With a real teacher, someone who can help you grow. I can arrange that." Maria stepped forward quickly, her hands trembling. "Ma'am, that's very kind, but—" Evelyn raised a hand gently. "Maria, it's not charity. It would be a waste to leave such talent hidden. He deserves a chance." Maria hesitated. She didn't want her son to owe anything to anyone, especially not to the woman she served. But when she looked at Leo's shining eyes, full of wonder and hope, her resistance softened. "If you truly mean it, ma'am," she said quietly, "then thank you." That afternoon, Evelyn made a few phone calls. She contacted an old friend of her late husband, a retired music professor who had once trained some of the best pianists in the country. When he heard about the boy, he laughed softly. "A maid's son, you say? Well, talent doesn't care about titles. Bring him to me." Within a week, Leo began his lessons. The professor was strict but kind. He was amazed at how quickly the boy learned. "He doesn't read notes the way others do," he told Evelyn once. "He feels them. It's rare, very rare." Evelyn started attending some of his lessons. At first, she told herself it was curiosity, nothing more. But soon she found herself moved again and again by the music. Watching Leo reminded her of what life used to be before her world became numbers and deals. He brought color back into her gray days. Maria watched all this from the sidelines with a mix of pride and fear. She was proud of her son, yes, but she also feared what success might cost him. The world of the rich was not kind to people like them. She had seen it too often. One evening when the lesson was over and the professor had left, Evelyn sat beside Leo at the piano. "You know, Leo," she said softly, "you've changed this house." Leo blinked, confused. "Changed it?" She nodded. "It used to be cold here, quiet, but now there's music again. And that's because of you." He smiled, small and sincere. "Then I'm glad," he said simply. That night, Maria found him sitting by the window in their small servants' room, staring at the stars. "Mama," he said, "do you think I can really be a pianist one day?" She knelt beside him and held his face in her hands. "I think you already are," she said softly. "You were born one." He grinned, his eyes shining with childlike joy. "Then I'll play for you and Miss Evelyn forever." Maria laughed gently, though a small ache tugged at her heart. She knew nothing lasted forever. Not joy, not kindness, not even music. But for now, she let herself believe in it. In the days that followed, Evelyn's mansion was no longer just a house of wealth. It became a home filled with sound and emotion. Guests who visited noticed the change immediately. The laughter was warmer, the air lighter. Everyone felt it, and the magic of the maid's son, whose fingers brought the forgotten heart of the mansion back to life. And somewhere deep inside Evelyn, a seed of something new began to grow. Not just admiration for Leo, but a quiet desire to make things right, to use her power for something good. What had started as a moment of mockery had turned into a symphony of hope. One that was just beginning to rise. Maria could feel it is a change in the air she couldn't quite name. Her son's music had brought joy and warmth into the mansion, but it had also stirred something far more complicated. The rich guests who once ignored her now smiled politely when they saw Leo. Some even spoke to him, asking him to play again at future gatherings. For the first time, the maid's son wasn't invisible, but not everyone liked that. Evelyn Hart watched it all with quiet unease. She had grown used to being the center of every room, the one everyone admired. But now, whenever she hosted an event, people wanted to hear him. "When is the boy playing again?" they would ask eagerly. Evelyn smiled at their questions, but deep inside, something sharp twisted in her chest. It wasn't jealousy, she told herself. It was something else, a discomfort she couldn't explain. How could this child, born in poverty without lessons or luxury, hold such power over people's hearts? She had spent her entire life earning respect and admiration, and yet, this boy had captured it effortlessly, with nothing but a few notes on a piano. One afternoon, Evelyn sat alone in her study, staring at the piano through the open door. It seemed to mock her. That same piano had once belonged to her husband, a man who had played with passion, not perfection. She had fallen in love with him because of that passion, and after his death she had buried all those feelings under layers of work and pride. But now every time Leo played, those memories came rushing back, stirring emotions she had tried to silence. Maybe that's why it hurt, because his music reminded her of the love she lost, the warmth she had locked away. Maria noticed the change in Evelyn too. The woman seemed quieter lately, more thoughtful, but also more distant. She no longer gave orders with her usual confidence. Sometimes she'd just stand near the piano, lost in thought. One morning, while Leo was practicing in the music hall, Evelyn entered without warning. Maria quickly stepped aside, but Leo kept playing, unaware that she had come in. His fingers moved gently over the keys, the melody tender and sad. Evelyn stood behind him, her arms folded, watching. When he finished, she said softly, "Do you always play such sad music?" Leo turned around quickly. "Oh, I didn't see you, ma'am." He hesitated before answering. "It's not sad to me. It's honest." Evelyn tilted her head. "Honest?" he nodded. "It's how I feel sometimes. It's like when you miss something, but you don't know what it is." Her breath caught slightly. The boy's words hit too close to home. "You're very young to feel that way," she said. Leo looked down at his hands. "Maybe," he murmured, "but music doesn't care how old you are. It just listens." Evelyn didn't know what to say. For a moment, she envied the simplicity of his world, a world where truth was not hidden behind manners and money. "Play something brighter," she said finally, her voice softer now. "Something that makes you happy." He smiled and began again, this time with a lively tune. As the sound filled the room, Evelyn's heart lifted. She felt lighter, freer, almost like her younger self. When he finished, she clapped lightly. "You have a gift, Leo," she said. "A real one." "Thank you, ma'am," he replied. "Mama says gifts are for sharing." Evelyn's smile faded slightly. "Your mother is a wise woman," she said. And she meant it. Maria had raised a son with a heart full of kindness despite having so little. It made Evelyn question her own choices, all the wealth, all the success, and yet so much emptiness. That evening, Evelyn hosted another dinner. This time she didn't ask Leo to play. Instead, she watched as her guests chatted and laughed, realizing how empty the noise sounded without his music. People admired her paintings, her jewelry, her food, but no one felt anything. It all seemed hollow. She left the table early and went upstairs. From her balcony, she could faintly hear the sound of Leo playing somewhere below, probably for himself. The melody floated up through the night air, soft and golden, wrapping around her like a whisper. Her eyes filled with tears. It had been so long since anyone had made her feel, and that scared her. The next day she became quieter, more withdrawn. She still supported Leo's lessons, but she rarely stayed to listen. Maria noticed and tried to stay out of her way. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling that Evelyn was struggling with something, a silent battle between admiration and resentment. One afternoon, Maria found Evelyn sitting alone in the parlor, staring at the piano again. "Ma'am?" she asked carefully. Evelyn looked up. "Your son is remarkable, Maria. Do you know that?" Maria nodded with a small, proud smile. "He's my heart, ma'am. Every note he plays feels like a prayer." Evelyn's lips curved faintly. "And do you ever worry?" Maria hesitated. "Always," she admitted. "This world wasn't made for boys like him, but I trust that music will protect him." Evelyn looked away. "Music doesn't protect anyone," she said quietly. "It only reminds you of what you've lost." For a long time, neither of them spoke. The ticking of the clock filled the silence. Then Evelyn stood, straightened her dress, and said softly, "Still, perhaps your son will prove me wrong." After she left, Maria sat down where she had been and touched the piano gently. She didn't fully understand Evelyn's sadness, but she felt it. Maybe in her own way, the rich woman was as lonely as anyone else. Later that evening, Leo came running to his mother, excited. "Mama, Miss Evelyn said she might take me to play at the music hall next month." Maria froze. "She did?" "Yes. She said people need to hear real music again." Maria smiled weakly and kissed his forehead. "Then play from your heart, my love," she whispered. "Always from your heart." But as she watched her son run off happily, a chill passed through her. She knew that with every note he played, Leo was climbing higher into a world that might one day try to own him, or break him. And upstairs, in her grand room full of golden silence, Evelyn Hart stood by the window, listening to the faint sound of Leo's piano once more. Her eyes glistened, and for the first time in years, she whispered a truth even she didn't want to believe. "I envy him, because he plays with the heart I lost." The morning of the performance arrived like a whisper of destiny. Sunlight spilled through the mansion's tall windows, casting gold across the marble floors. Everyone was in motion, servants polishing, arranging flowers, setting chairs in perfect rows. Tonight, Evelyn Hart was hosting her most important charity gala of the year, one that would bring together the city's most powerful names. But this time, something was different. For once, the evening wasn't about Evelyn. It was about the boy, the maid's son who had captured everyone's heart. Leo had been invited to play at the event, not as a servant's child, but as a performer. Maria still couldn't believe it. As she ironed his little suit, a crisp black jacket with a white bow tie that Evelyn herself had chosen, her hands trembled. Her heart swelled with pride, but fear lingered too. She had lived long enough to know that admiration from the rich could turn cruel in an instant. "Are you nervous, my love?" she asked softly. Leo smiled as he practiced his scales on the small wooden table, his fingers moving in the air as if touching invisible keys. "A little," he admitted. "But when I play the fear go, it's like the music takes over." Maria kissed the top of his head. "Then let it. Let the music speak for you tonight." As the evening came, the mansion glowed brighter than ever. Candles shimmered in glass chandeliers and laughter echoed through the halls. Guests arrived in glittering gowns and tuxedos, their conversations full of wealth and charm. Evelyn Hart stood at the top of the staircase, her presence commanding as always. But inside she was anxious. For days, she had battled a strange feeling she couldn't name, a mix of pride, guilt, and something deeper. Leo's talent had changed her, softened her edges. Yet she couldn't help wondering if she was doing this to help him, or to heal herself. When the clock struck 8, Evelyn stepped onto the small stage that had been set up in the Great Hall. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice steady but warm, "tonight, our charity gala celebrates not only giving but the beauty of potential, the promise that talent can bloom anywhere, even in the most unexpected places." She paused, looking toward the side of the room where Maria and Leo stood. "Please welcome a young pianist who has reminded me, and perhaps all of us, of the simple power of music to touch the heart. The simple power of music to touch the heart." The applause was polite at first. Leo walked slowly to the piano, his small shoes tapping softly on the floor. He climbed onto the stool, adjusted it the way his teacher had shown him, and took a deep breath. The lights above him seemed too bright. The faces in the audience looked distant, almost unreal. He closed his eyes and then he began to play. The first notes were soft like raindrops touching glass. Then came the melody, smooth, gentle, and full of emotion. The crowd fell silent. The sound filled every corner of the hall, each note painting a picture of childhood, of dreams, of love that asked for nothing in return. Maria stood near the wall, tears already streaming down her face. She had never seen her son so confident, so alive. His fingers moved as if guided by something beyond him, the kind of grace that cannot be taught. As the music grew, Evelyn found herself unable to look away. The boy was no longer just her maid son. He was something else, and something pure, divine. The melody stirred memories she had locked away for years. Her husband playing by the firelight. The nights filled with laughter and warmth, the feeling of love that she had buried under ambition. When Leo reached the final chord, he held it for a moment, a sound that shimmered like light, then let it fade. The silence that followed was deep, almost holy. And then the hall erupted in applause. People stood clapping wildly. Some shouted bravo. Others wiped tears from their eyes. The child had moved them all. Maria's knees felt weak as she watched the scene. Her son, standing in front of the city's richest, not as a servant's boy, but as an artist. Evelyn stepped forward, her hands trembling slightly as she joined the applause. She walked up to Leo and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You've done something remarkable tonight," she said softly. Leo looked up at her, his face glowing with joy. "Thank you, ma'am." But as the applause faded and the crowd returned to their chatter, Evelyn's heart grew heavy. She had seen something in those few minutes, something that both inspired and frightened her. The boy's music didn't just touch hearts, it revealed them. It made people feel things they wanted to forget, things she had spent her whole life hiding from. After the performance, guests surrounded Evelyn, showering her with compliments. "Such talent. What a discovery. You must take credit for finding him." Evelyn smiled politely, but Maria, standing nearby, heard every word. She saw how easily credit was taken from those who had nothing. She stepped forward, her voice quiet but steady. "It's not me or anyone who found him," she said. "The music found him. It lives inside him." The guests went silent for a moment. Evelyn turned toward her, their eyes meeting. For the first time, Evelyn didn't look at Maria as a servant, but as a mother, strong and proud. Later that night, after the guests had left and the lights had dimmed, Evelyn found herself in the empty hall, standing by the piano. Leo was asleep upstairs, exhausted from his big night. Maria was cleaning up quietly, humming the same melody he had played. Evelyn ran her fingers across the keys. "He's extraordinary," she said softly. Maria looked up. "He is, ma'am. But he's still just a child." Evelyn nodded slowly. "Yes, a child, with a gift that the world will want to take from him." There was a long silence. Then Evelyn spoke again, her voice almost a whisper. "Maria, I want to help him, but I don't know how to do it without breaking him." Maria looked at her, eyes kind but firm. "Then help him stay who he is. That's all any of us can do." Evelyn nodded again, the words sinking deep into her heart. She understood now. The boy didn't just bring music back into her house. He had brought back her humanity. That night, as she walked upstairs, she paused outside Leo's small room. The boy slept peacefully, his hands resting on his chest as if still feeling the rhythm of his song. Evelyn smiled faintly. "Maybe," she whispered, "you were sent here to remind me what matters." And for the first time in many years, Evelyn Hart went to bed not thinking about her wealth or her image, but about music, love, and a child who had made her feel alive again. Years passed, and time moved through the grand mansion like a quiet melody that never really ended. The walls that had once echoed with silence now held memories, laughter, music, and the soft footsteps of a boy who had grown into a young man. Leo was no longer the shy child who hid behind the curtains. He had become confident, graceful, and full of passion. His hands, once small and uncertain, now danced across the piano keys with power and precision. He had performed at music halls, charity events, and even on stages Evelyn once thought too grand for him. Every performance drew admiration, not because of his fame, but because his music still carried the same soul it always had. Maria remained by his side through it all, watching him bloom with the same wonder she had felt when he first touched that piano. She still worked at the mansion, though Evelyn often told her she didn't have to. "Your family now?" Evelyn had said once, her voice uncharacteristically soft. And in truth, that's what they had become. An unlikely family bound by something stronger than blood, love, loss, and music. But even as success surrounded them, Maria sometimes looked at her son with a mother's worry. Fame, she knew, could change people. The world could lift you up with one hand and crush you with the other. Yet Leo remained humble. "I'll never forget where I came from, Mama," he would say. "This music, it's yours as much as mine." Evelyn, now older and quieter, took great pride in him. But behind her gentle smiles there was something else, a quiet sadness that never fully left her. She often sat in her study, listening to Leo practice in the music room, her thoughts drifting to the past, to her husband, to the years of loneliness, to the night when everything changed because of one small boy with a gift she almost ignored. One crisp autumn evening, Leo returned from a concert abroad. The city outside was golden with falling leaves, and the mansion was lit softly with warm lights. Maria had cooked his favorite meal, simple stew and bread, the same food she used to make when they had nothing. They sat together in the kitchen, laughing and sharing stories, when Evelyn appeared in the doorway. She looked frailer than before, her silver hair pulled neatly back, but her eyes, though tired, still held that spark of pride whenever she looked at Leo. "You're back," she said with a smile. Leo stood up at once. "Miss Evelyn," he said warmly, "I was just telling Mama about the concert in Paris. They gave me a standing ovation." "I heard," Evelyn replied softly. Word travels fast when brilliance is involved. Maria blushed at the compliment to her son, but Evelyn wasn't finished. She stepped closer, placing a hand gently on Leo's shoulder. "Do you remember, Leo," she said, "the first time you played in this house? How small you were. How brave." Leo smiled. "I remember you didn't believe I could play." Evelyn laughed lightly, a sound as delicate as glass. "No, I didn't. I was foolish then, blind to what truly mattered. You taught me something I'll never forget." "What's that?" he asked. "That genius has no title, and grace can come from the humblest places," she said. "You gave this house back its heart." Maria looked away, wiping a tear from her cheek. Evelyn's words carried truth and none regret. Later that night, Leo went to the piano. The hall was quiet, the candles flickering softly. Maria and Evelyn sat side by side, watching as he began to play. The music was gentle, not grand or showy, but filled with feeling. It was the same melody he had played as a boy, the one that had once silenced a room full of laughter and pride. Only now it was richer, wiser, full of life. Evelyn closed her eyes as the sound filled the air. Every note carried her back. To her husband's love, to her mistakes, to the child she had once overlooked. When the final note faded, she opened her eyes, and for the first time tears rolled freely down her face. "Thank you," she whispered, "for bringing him back, and then for bringing me back too." Leo smiled softly. "You never really left, Miss Evelyn. You just forgot how to listen." Evelyn laughed through her tears. "Perhaps I did." That night marked the last time Evelyn heard Leo play in her home. Weeks later, she fell ill, and though she remained calm and graceful, everyone knew she was nearing the end. On her bedside table sat a small music box, a gift from Leo, playing the very tune that had once changed everything. When she passed, it was said that her final smile came as the music played softly by her side. After her funeral, the mansion no longer felt heavy or cold. It was filled with light and with life. Maria and Leo stayed on for a while, taking care of the home that had given them both pain and purpose. Eventually, Leo moved to the city, where he continued to compose and perform, dedicating his first album to the woman who listened, and the mother who believed. Years later, when people spoke of Leo Hart, the world-famous pianist known for his emotional depth and humble grace, they rarely knew the full story. They didn't know he was once the maid's son who played on an old forgotten piano. They didn't know his first audience had laughed, but those who truly knew him, those who heard the emotion in his music, could always sense it, the love of a mother, the regret of a woman who changed, and the heartbeat of a child who turned pain into beauty. And in that grand mansion, now quiet and timeless, the piano still stood by the window. Sometimes, when the sun hit it just right, it seemed to glow as if remembering the day when a small boy's fingers gave it a voice again. It was no longer just an instrument. It was a memory, the sound of forgiveness, courage, and a genius. It was a memory, the sound of forgiveness, courage, and a genius.